Hello, hello. Welcome to the live. It's Coach Steph. I am again excited to talk about this topic. We're talking about carbs today. Is today's Tuesday and I'm a little tired, y'all. I'm a little tired. I almost canceled this and I was like, man, I'm just exhausted. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to stick to my schedule and change the scope. So, this is something that I learned from a podcast that I listened to recently that basically said stick to your schedule, change the scope. So, it's not going to be a long live. There's a ton that I could say about carbohydrates, y'all. A ton. But I'm going to keep this short and sweet. If you have questions, immediately put them in the chat. What questions do you have about carbs? A lot of times we try to reduce our carbohydrates when we are trying to lose weight or you have a fitness goal. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So if you have questions, put those in the chat. I won't be long, but I will give you a few tips on carbohydrates and kind of how the science works around carbohydrates, but then also ways that you can think about it so that it's not causing you to restrict yourself unnecessarily. So if you're watching the replay, hashtag replay. If you're watching the live, say hello. Let me know you're watching. And we are just going to dive right on in because I went to the doctor not too long ago and my vitamin D was low, which I kind of knew it would be low because I work from home. I don't get outside a bunch. Um, and I knew that something was been going on with me and that can cause fatigue. So I've been so tired lately and this has been going on for a while, but for whatever reason today I'm like super tired. So I'm going to give you all this information. If you have questions after I get done, definitely let me know and we can talk about it. So I know that I want to say a couple people had questions, but when I looked, I couldn't find it. I did find one from Angela who had a question about carb blockers, and I'm going to get to that. Um, I'll just go ahead and actually answer that off top. So her question was, do carb blockers really work? And if so, which ones are the most effective ones? So, Angela, I'm sure carb blockers probably do work. The question is, are you going to take carb blockers for the rest of your life, right? If you don't learn the skill of how to create a balanced plate for yourself, then you will need the carb blocker forever because the carb blocker is kind of like brushing your teeth. Like if you just brushed your teeth for 1 week and be like, okay, I will never need to brush my teeth again. No, like you still have to keep that up. Like if that's working, like you have to keep going. Like a year from now, 6 months from now, you can't say, well, I used to carb I brushed my teeth then, right? Like you have to make sure that if you're doing something, it continues to work because the carb blocker really only works. I'm assuming you probably need to take it with your food. And so that means that you have to be taking it on a regular basis. So unless you want to do that, then it's just a skill to learn how to balance your plate. And we're going to talk about that today. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you have like some sort of like issue in terms of your carbohydrate utilization. I have a whole two-part series in here in the group if you guys want to check that out and search in the group about diabetes. And I talk a lot about carbohydrates because that's like one of the main things that you want to be aware of in terms of diabetes. So I'll talk about carbs, but I'm going to give you guys a few tips today about that as well. So let's see. All right. So if y'all have comments or questions, let me know. I don't see any in the chat right now, so I am going to get started. So the title of the live was which carbs to focus on to get to your goal. So a lot of times I hear people say, well, I'm doing low carb or carbs, make me fat or I feel bloated when I eat carbs, right? So when we talk about carbohydrates, if you look on the back of a label, for every gram of carb, when it says total carbohydrates, you can just multiply that by 4, and that's roughly how many calories you're getting from that, right? Protein has the exact same amount of carbs, about 4 calories for every 1 gram of protein that you see, okay? So in terms of fat, fat has 9 calories per gram. So in terms of calorie wise, carbohydrates don't have more calories than protein, don't have more calories than fat, but we tend to sometimes overeat carbohydrates because a lot of times there might be something sweet and it's good and it tastes good and you just want to like overindulge. Um, Sometimes we can have like really carb heavy meals and just like lots of grains and things like that. And it's not a bad thing, but you just have to know how to reel it in. So when we talk about restricting carbohydrates, what we really want to be doing is restricting single or just simple sugar. Okay. So I got these blocks, my son's blocks, and I've showed y'all this before in some previous lives. Whereas this is a single, like, let's just say sugar molecule, right? A carbohydrate is when it is linked together, and really, like, this is like a longer chain. So think about it as a longer chain if I had like 10 or 15 of these little blocks, right? So in your body, when you consume, let's say, oatmeal, right? You eat the oatmeal, your body has to go through this process of absorbing this and taking this into your blood cell. So this is going into your blood cell. This is going into your blood cell. This is going into your bloodstream, right? So when we say choose fiber-filled carbohydrates or carbohydrates that are complex carbohydrates, it just means that the sugar molecules are actually linked together and it takes a little bit longer for your body to chemically unhook this and then it goes into your bloodstream, right? So when you have simple sugars, they're just like this and they're easily absorbable. Like it starts to break down even in your mouth. So if you were to take like a cracker and just hold it in your mouth, it would start to break down pretty simply, pretty immediately, right? And so think about that as being like in your gut, because your mouth is part of your digestive system and it's easily being broken down and then it's shooting it into your bloodstream. And then when that happens, we have insulin. It's kind of like the UPS truck. It couples with the sugar and it takes it to the cells and tries to deliver it to the cells. And when the cells don't need it, it will store it as fat. Okay. So we want to be focusing on carbohydrates that are complex carbohydrates. What does that mean? That means whole fruits, whole veggies. So the difference between a whole fruit and a whole veggie, I always give this example of an apple, going out and eating an apple versus eating applesauce, right? Applesauce is a little bit more processed. You don't go outside and just pick up applesauce. You pick up a whole apple. If you will eat mostly single ingredient whole foods, meaning foods that I can literally go outside and pick up and eat, meaning, avocado, blueberries, strawberries, apples, right? Like things that you can literally grow and that are usually like on the outskirts of the grocery store. People say that a lot, like shop mostly on the outside. Why do they say that? Because the produce is there. The whole single ingredient foods are there. So fruits, veggies. And I know a lot of times people will say, well, fruit has too much sugar or pineapples are too sweet or something like that, right? And so there's a whole nother conversation about the glycemic index and whether or not certain foods will increase your blood glucose a little bit more than others. And here's what I'll say about that. The way to mitigate that is just to, number one, again, eat single ingredient whole foods. So that's the difference, like again, like I said, between apple and applesauce. The apple is going to take longer for your body to digest because your body still has to break down all the skin, right? It has to put in more work, and that actually increases your caloric burn just by eating single ingredient foods. So you'll want to focus on that, and then you'll want to focus on limiting your added sugar. So when you're going to the grocery store and you're looking at things like bread or really anything that has a package, looking at how much added sugar does this have in it and then comparing brands and seeing, okay, which one of these do I like? Because you always want to buy food that you like, that has a little bit less added sugar. Okay. So there's a whole host of things you can be looking at, but right now we're just focusing on the carbohydrates. Okay. Is this making sense so far? I don't. Oh, here we go. See, Tawana, I'm currently at the hair salon. I'll have to watch the replay. No problem. Thanks for commenting. Okay. So, single ingredient whole foods, we want to be looking at and reducing our sugar, like our added sugar, right? Because that's just the little pieces here that just get blooded into our bloodstream. We want to be looking at the fiber content. So not only are you looking how much added sugar does this have, how many grams of fiber does this have, and we want to choose options that have more fiber. So if you're eating a banana, it doesn't even come with a label really. It has fiber. You don't have to worry about that. But in terms of your carbohydrates that may have a label, like your bread, English muffin, things like that, you will want to make sure that you're looking and choosing most of the time things that have 3 grams of fiber or more per serving. So also, if you're tracking in MyFitnessPal, you'll want to make sure I have my clients change one of the nutrients tracked to fiber, because most people only get like half of the fiber that they need for the day. So that is another way that you can focus on getting single ingredient whole foods that have fiber. You're tracking your fiber, you're tracking your added sugar. Okay. So another thing that you'll want to think about in terms of carbohydrate is your portion size. So we have this all or nothing mentality when it comes to our nutrition and our fitness. And I know that like we're perfectionists, right? So we just want things to be very black and white. At the end of the day, you can have carbohydrates. You have to monitor your portions, right? So even with fruit, right? Especially if you're a diabetic. I was working clinical practice at one point, and a guy came in. He had like his blood sugars were so high. I'm sure he had lots of things going on, but he like loved grapes, and he would like just eat a whole bunch of grapes. And I guess he didn't realize that they were carbohydrates. And so it's not that you can't have grapes, but it's that normally roughly about a half a cup is the serving size, right? So you can have even white potatoes, y'all. You can have white potatoes, you can have sweet potatoes, you can have quinoa or rice, or you can have those things, but start measuring out at least just your carbohydrate into a half a cup portion, right? So if you're measuring that half a cup out, you're also making sure that, oh, okay, it has 3 grams of fiber or more per serving to mitigate an insulin spike. And you're pairing that with some protein. You always want to pair your carbohydrates with protein and or healthy fat, but because a lot of times we're not getting enough protein, it's just easiest to eat protein at every single meal. So all of that helps to reduce the amount of insulin that is secreted whenever you are eating carbohydrates. Okay, so you're monitoring your portions. You are making sure it has 3 grams of fiber or more. If you're tracking your sugar in MyFitnessPal, you're making sure that like you're choosing things that have a little bit less added sugar. And you're not restricting yourself, because a lot of times you guys will go cold turkey and not have something, not have any sweets, no sweets. And then you'll just break down and then just have all the sweets. And there's like no middle ground. So finding some balance in that, okay? Another thing, I was always surprised when people didn't realize that milk and yogurt are also carbohydrates. Like when we think of milk, we typically think of protein. But if you look on the back, I highly recommend y'all start looking at the back of your food labels. It has roughly, I believe, like 12 grams of carbohydrates, total carbohydrates, right? So about 15 grams of carbohydrate is considered 1 serving of carbohydrate. So this is something that like my diabetic patients, when I used to do clinical, we would teach them how to carb count And the way we did that was for every 15 grams of carbohydrate, that was one serving. And then we would say, based on their goal, their weight, sex, and all of that, how many total carbohydrate servings they could have. So normally it was like 3 at each meal. And so that would be 15, 15, and 15, right? So let's say you're having a cup of milk. That typically has about 12 grams or so. And we just round that up to 15. That's one serving. Maybe you have one piece of toast, and that is one serving. We want to make sure that toast has 3 grams of fiber or more. You always want to have some protein. So maybe you have eggs, or maybe you have Greek yogurt or something like that. And maybe you have, maybe you're doing avocado toast. You put the little avocado on there. That is a fat, right? So I think I did mention avocado earlier, but avocado is a fat, y'all. It's not a carbohydrate. Um, and so you could put that on there, and then you could have one more carbohydrate, right? Depending on your goals and your tolerance for carbs, right? So 15 grams of carbohydrate equal one serving. And if you look on the back of milk and on the back of a lot of yogurts, milk and yogurt are also carbohydrates. So when we think of our macros, a lot of times we think, okay, eggs are protein, or milk is protein, or beans are carbs. Well, beans also have some protein. Eggs also have fat, right? So they're not just one or the other. Sometimes there's a blend, and milk and yogurt actually typically have all three, unless you're doing skim milk, and then it doesn't have any fat. So in terms of that, if you're a milk drinker, that's a carb, right? And so there's lots of debate about milk and whether or not it causes phlegm and inflammation. If you feel better not having milk, I'm personally not a milk drinker just because I've never liked milk. I don't drink milk, but I do have like almond milk. But if you're a milk drinker, understand that, okay, this is a carbohydrate. It does have lots of vitamins and minerals. So it can be a good source. There's nothing wrong with having milk unless you just have an aversion, an allergy, or you feel like it does cause inflammation, and then that's a personal choice. Then cut it out. It's totally fine. But when you're choosing milk, if you are a milk drinker, you want to choose your dairy that has a little bit less fat, right? So it's not that fat's bad. I actually encourage my clients to add healthy fat to their meals. But when it comes to fat that comes from animal sources, we want to be sure that we're not getting a ton of animal fat, because that's the fat that usually can clog your arteries and cause other like chronic diseases. So you want to choose on the lower end of the fat spectrum, skim milk, 2%, 1%, that kind of thing. Okay. So we talked about fruits, veggies, milk if you're a milk drinker. We talked about portions and why portions might be important for you to monitor. Having your carbohydrates with a protein and or a healthy fat, right? Let me see if y'all have any questions. Okay, no. Is this making sense, y'all? Is this making sense? If you have any questions, I see six people watching. If you have any questions, what questions do you have? I'm going to keep going while y'all think, and let me know if you have any questions. So, let me check my notes real quick. Okay, so another tip on carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are our body's preferred method to fuel our brain and to fuel our body. So I know like some people like to do fasted cardio, right? It's usually like steady state cardio. It's not like high intensity cardio. I personally, just in my body, I don't like to do that. I always have to eat something. So I always, like, if I wake up early in the morning and go work out, I'm going to have either a piece of fruit, and you should really be pairing that with something else, but sometimes I just grab a banana and go, or I'll grab a Lara bar, or yesterday I bought my Greek yogurt. Again, Greek yogurt. Yogurt is a carbohydrate. You want to be choosing that Greek yogurt that doesn't have a whole bunch of syrupy stuff in it, right? So the one that I get is the vanilla. It doesn't have any like fruit in it. So if you want fruit in it, add fresh fruit. Don't buy the ones that have all the fruit already in it because it's a lot of syrup, to be honest. It's just sugar. Um, so that's kind of what I do. But if you know you're gonna have like a heavier carb meal, you'll want to couple that with a walk or a workout. So a good practice is just like, okay, if I know I'm having a heavy dinner, leave some room and like take a 30-minute walk afterwards because our carbohydrates are what fuel your muscles and your brain. So having your higher carbohydrate meals around your workout. So this means you kind of have to be strategic. You have to have your meals planned out. You have to know when your workout days are. And a lot of you guys just are not intentional about planning your workout. I was having this discussion yesterday on the Fit Figure Formula group coaching call. And it's like, if you just say, hey, I'm going to work out 3 times this week, but you haven't put it on your calendar and set an intention, you're out of alignment, right? So I know for me, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday are like the days where I'm like, I'm going to the gym in the morning, right? And it doesn't always happen, right? Like this morning, today's Tuesday, I didn't go to the gym, right? And I hate it when I miss it. I hate it when I miss, but I'm just like, okay, if I miss one day, like if I miss a Tuesday, then I'll just go on Wednesday, right? Or sometimes Fridays are days that I kind of miss. I have an intention for 5 days, but like if I miss a Friday, it's fine. I usually go on Saturday morning because that's like how I start my weekend. That's like a mandatory thing for me in my mindset. But that means if you're coupling your highest carbohydrate meal around your workout, you got to know what your schedule is. So I need y'all to put this on your calendar and just have your days. I should be able to come up to you and be like, hey, so and so, when do you work out? And you should be able to be like, boom, 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 boom. These are the days I work out. These are my workout days. Right? Even if you have to be flexible with that plan, you have to have the plan in order to like actually execute it, plan effectively when it comes to your meals and your workouts. What about plant-based dairy, almond, coconut? So some of those will have added sugar. I know, like for me, I don't like the plain almond milk, and I haven't tried all the different brands, but the almond milk that I get is vanilla, and it probably has some added sugar in it, but it's not a lot. I think maybe it might have 30 or 60 calories per serving or something like that. I think it's really important that you buy food that you like. I've tried the original one, and I don't like it. I'm not going to drink that, right? So you're gonna have a little bit of added sugar in your diet. It's okay, but you want to try to mitigate that and just kind of see. That's why it's good to track. But yes, so you can have, if you like almond milk, you want to try coconut milk. And I remember when I went through this phase of finally accepting I don't like regular milk. I don't like cow's milk. So I just started buying, every time I go to the grocery store, I'd buy something new. I tried almond milk and I'm like, ooh, I don't like this almond milk. Let me change the brand. Let me buy this next brand. And then the next week I would buy a different brand. Then maybe I'd try coconut milk. So I just started trying stuff. And I landed on one that I liked. But I would never have found that if I didn't try. So definitely try it out and see. But a lot of your coconut milks, your almond milks, your soy milk, if you like soy milk, you'll again just have to read the label and see whether or not it has additional sugar in it, and compare brands. Buy the one with the lowest one that you actually like. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question. You said, what about plant-based dairy? So that's totally fine. You can do that. You'll still have to watch how much added sugar, because I feel like everything has added sugar in it almost. Attention deficit disorder. Yes, Natalie. So, I I think our brain really likes frameworks. Our brain really likes frameworks, which is why it's easier for us to work inside of a structure. So you may just have to sit down and think about how you best set intentions and like when things are working well for you and you're actually executing. What's happening? Did you write it down? Just something as simple like your process might be I wrote it down. And if I write it down, I'm much more likely to get it done. Right? So you just have to decide. It's just like literally mental, like deciding these are my days. And then if it needs to be tweaked, tweak it. But setting that intention is super important. I like almond milk, but my family doesn't. So I buy 2%. Yeah, and that is fine. 2% is fine. Um, Everything can fit in your diet, which is why you want to track if you're not tracking, just to get an idea. Because I could totally have full fat milk, right? It just depends on what else I'm having throughout the day. So I could have something, I could have a Snickers bar, right? And I could put that into my Fitness Pal, and I could technically find a way to orchestrate the rest of my food so that I still hit my goals with even with a Snickers bar every day. It just depends on what else you have. So if you're not tracking, right, then it's harder to know that. So then you kind of want to look at everything. But having that plan, setting that intention is super duper important. So either way, if you buy the almond milk, if you're buying the original almond milk, Tawana, there, I mean, I haven't found one that's good yet, but I buy the vanilla and I enjoy that. I'm gonna go look and see how much added sugar it has in it, but I don't think it has a ton, and I'm okay with it. And I don't drink a lot of milk, anyways. In general, I'm just not a fan. All right, so we talked about fruits, veggies, and single ingredient foods, foods that have 3 grams of fiber or more per serving, coupling your carbohydrate with protein or healthy fat. We talked about putting your higher carbohydrate meals around a walk or a workout. We talked about portion control and using that half a cup of carbohydrates. And just as a side note as well, there are some carbohydrates, for example, like lentils. Lentils are carbohydrates, but they also have a good amount of protein as well. I just made some couscous the other day, and I was looking on the back, and it had like 8 grams of protein in this grain. I thought it was like, okay, it was actually pretty good. So you can swap out if you're like, just swapping out like regular rice with either some couscous or some quinoa or lentils. I'm trying to think if I ever have lentils. I don't think I've ever had lentils, but I know some people that do like them. So you can do that as well. So understand that carbohydrate foods don't just have carbohydrates in them, right? Like things like lentils, even peas have some protein as well, which can help you reach your protein goal. What else do I want to tell y'all about carbohydrates before I get out of here? What other questions do y'all have? All in all, I want you guys to know that you don't have to cut out carbohydrates, like totally cut out carbohydrates in order to reach your goals. You don't. I eat carbs, y'all. And the people that I know that just like live a healthy and fit lifestyle, they eat carbs, right? They eat carbs. It's just that, again, you have to monitor your portions. What else are you having with them? And are you utilizing them for fuel, or are you going and like laying down or eating? There's nothing wrong with eating late at night, but like I think what matters is your total carbohydrate intake for the entire day. You guys will probably be surprised at how many carbohydrates you can have, but I think that being mindful of your portions throughout the day, a lot of y'all skip breakfast and then you're like super hungry, 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're like super hungry, and then you actually overeat. And then because you really haven't had a lot of calories throughout the day, at night, you're wondering why you're hungry and why you want a whole bunch of carbs at night. It's because you haven't given your body enough protein, enough healthy fat, and enough total calories throughout the day. So now you're really hungry at night. And that's just a lack of total calories, a lack of balance. Protein, water, fiber, healthy fat is going to help to kill some of those cravings. So the key really is for a lot of you guys to eat and eat well and like think about nourishing your body versus always taking things away. You can induce um, hypothyroidism, like trying to eat too little carbohydrates, and think about the things that you're taking away. When you're taking away carbohydrates and you're not eating fruit, you're not eating vegetables, you're taking away all the nutrients that those veggies and those fruits provide as well. Cancer fighting properties, all the pigments that you see, red, yellow, blue, purple, all of that, they have different nutrient profiles. That's why we should be eating the rainbow. We should be eating colorful foods because each one of those pigments has a different profile of nutrients that actually helps your brain, helps your heart, helps fight cancer, and gives you energy, y'all. Some of y'all are. I just posted a live that I'm going to do about energy, and a lot of us are just not eating. We're not eating. We're not nourishing our body, and then we wonder why we don't have energy. So yeah. All right. If you don't have any more questions, I am done. 30 minutes, it's a little bit shorter than I normally go, but I hope this was helpful. If you guys have any questions that I didn't talk about, maybe I missed some things, I'd be happy to answer your questions for you. So if you watched to the end, thank you for watching. If you're looking for a coach, I'd love to be your coach. The Fit Figure Formula is open for enrollment for our next cohort. I'm so excited. I've already gotten a few ladies in. They're getting the bonuses right now that come with signing on during the early bird. So if you want to know what that is, let me know. Message me or just go to my profile and click the link to apply for the 16-week program. So I will talk to you soon. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to tell you. If you either can't afford the 16-week program or if you're like, I don't know if I need that much support, I do have a MyFitnessPal makeover for you that is super helpful in helping you hit your macros. And we can talk more about that, what that looks like. All right? Y'all have a great Tuesday.